What's shaking, everybody? My name is Ross Mandell. I'm coming to you guys live today from sunny Delray Beach, Florida, Scott Woolley Studios. What a treat I have for you today. The president of Mr. Olympia, Muscle and Fitness. These are names that mean so much to this podcaster personally. I got engaged at his event 28 years ago. Of course, before he was the president. But that's how much that spot means to me. I flew my girlfriend at the time out to Long Beach, California, and proposed to marry me. Steffi, you remember that? Dorian Yates won a big event. And I just want to say hello, and I want you all to understand we're meeting the great Dan Solomon.
Ross, first of all, I got to tell you, what an incredible introduction, and I appreciate that more than you know. It's special for me to be here for a couple reasons. First of all, I love that you are an authentic, real deal bodybuilding lifestylist. Like, you've lived it, you've been down that road, and I know you love talking about it. The minute I walked into the studio, you started rambling great bodybuilding stories, stories that have attached to important parts of your life, which I love that. But I'll also throw one thing in there. You mentioned that we're coming to you live from the Scott Woolley studio. Now, Scott Woolley, I worked for Scott shortly after I graduated college. I got a job in television, working for a small boutique television production company that Scott owned and operated. And we produced all kinds of television shows before I set sail on a different path. But so it's great to be here at the Scott Woolley studio talking to you.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
What a coincidence, huh?
It is. And it's funny. I feel like life is filled with those, especially those of us who have been in this area, South Florida, for a long time. I've made it my home with my family for many, many years. And our paths inevitably cross. That's why it's important that we're kind to people and respect people. Because I always say, one day somebody will be working for you. One day somebody will be working, you'll be working for that person. And it's important to kind of keep those relationships intact, like I know you have. And I've gotten a chance to catch up on a lot of your shows here that you do on this podcast. You've had some great guests, and it's really fun to be here to get to talk to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Dan. And I want to just jump right in because, I'm like a little kid when you talk about the Olympia and you talk about bodybuilding. That's one of my great passions. I was training since I'm a young man. I was in a Long Island powerlifting contest pre-16 years old. Yeah. And I won my weight class at that time when I was 15. And at that time, believe it or not, this is in the 70s, weightlifting was considered controversial.
Yep.
What? I mean, what? They didn't even have weight rooms in a lot of the NFL training teams and stuff, early on, going back into the 60s and 70s.
Well, you got to remember, I made a movie about Joe Weider, who, of course, is the iconic, pioneering founder of the bodybuilding movement back in the 40s and 50s. And we talk about that a lot, the idea of athletes looking more like Babe Ruth, sports teams not having strength trainers. When games were over, guys didn't have protein shakes. They didn't stretch. They went out and had beers with their buddies.
Correct.
It was a different world.
They smoked.
There weren't, right, they smoked cigarettes. There were no nutrition companies. Weider Nutrition was the first one. And for those of your listeners who don't know this, Joe Weider is the founder of the very event and the properties that I oversee today. He created the Mr. Olympia back in 1965, and we just did it for the 60th time. But yeah, there was a time when the world looked very different. Now, when you drive up and down streets and you see gyms and strip malls, and even during the pandemic, when the world was really struggling, it was the gyms that were kind of keeping things afloat. And then you saw the impact when people weren't allowed to go to gyms and what it was doing to them psychologically. But that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, the world has changed in a big way, and you've been around to see a lot of it.
Now, the Olympia, for people that don't know, is the Super Bowl of bodybuilding.
Yeah,
that is the Wimbledon. That is the World Series. To win an Olympia means you are number one essentially in the whole world.
Yeah, it is the top of the mountain. There are events around the world on given Saturday nights in cities on all continents, and they are effectively a qualifying system that allows world-class competitors spanning a multitude of divisions: bodybuilding, bikini, wellness, fitness, physique. There's all sorts of divisions.
It's amazing how it's expanded.
It's really grown. And then the year culminates with the Olympia, and that's an opportunity to stand on that rarefied air, that stage that people aspire to. You're right. It is the Masters. It is the NBA Finals. It is the World Cup. It is the World Series.
It is really it.
And when you win the Olympia, I always say the Olympia isn't a title. It is a name change. When you become Mr. Olympia, you are forever known as Mr. Olympia. And it really has a profound impact on people's lives, both financially and in a number of other ways. And it's an exciting thing to witness. The Olympia started, as I mentioned, back in the 60s, and it was a bodybuilding contest. A lot of your listeners will know it because Arnold Schwarzenegger won the Mr. Olympia title 7 times. And then
made a great movie.
Made a great movie. Made a lot of great movies.
Maybe the greatest bodybuilding movie ever.
Yeah, Pumping Iron.
Of course. Am I wrong?
Right. Well, of course, for those who don't know, Pumping Iron is the documentary about the 1975 Mr. Olympia.
You got to watch it. Pumping Iron. Arnold's
which is the story of his battle with the great Lou Ferrigno, headed to Pretoria, South Africa.
His father. I mean,
it was
these things happened.
Yes. But since those days, the Olympia has grown into a global showcase of all things fitness, not just a bodybuilding contest. So it brings together the ecosystem of fitness and bodybuilding and all kinds of physical disciplines. And it culminates every year in Las Vegas. And it's a big event. We bring a ton of people to the city. The city is so proud of the city of Las Vegas, which of course hosts the biggest events in the world.
In the whole world.
Gave us the key to the city last year for the work that we've done to sort of connect the fitness community with Las Vegas, and we were really proud of that. So it's grown a lot.
I'm hoping that I get a special invitation this year. I'm your guest.
We would love for you to come, Ross. And it's funny because my favorite thing is people who are either coming for the first time, which of course is not you, or somebody who hasn't been in a long time gets to see how far this thing's come, how much visceral sensory overload lives in that theater. It is a show that we sell out in less than 3 days. Tickets have gotten expensive, but people have such an insatiable appetite to witness this and be a part of it. And then, of course, there's the expo that takes place at the convention center. It's a really great weekend.
You know, back in the day, I'm talking in the 90s, when I became friendly with Wayne DeMiglia, Joe and Ben told him to take my call, gave me his number, and said that we're going to hook you up. And they did. These guys were very good to their word. Funny guys, I'm just going to say. I've dealt with a lot of, I was a stockbroker for the rich and famous, really, for 30 years. These were 2 very funny guys, but I loved them. They loved me. They were very good to me. Every year I had the best seats at all these different events, and I was allowed to bring who I brought, and it was just really, it was shocking to me at how the size of bodybuilding back in those days, there was no money involved. I'm a money guy, and I often thought about, buying into this sport like that, because it was shocking how you would get, they wanted like $100,000 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, today's probably $1 million, right?
Well, today, at the most recent Olympia, the prize purse was about $2 million.
Right, real money.
Across the sport. And what's also come in to the industry is just really meaningful endorsement relationships.
The sponsorships are crazy now.
Because now there's all types of divisions with all different body types. So you're finding opportunities. The central artery of the global fitness and bodybuilding industry lives in the supplement industry, the nutrition industry, apparel, and equipment. Those are the main endemic brands that drive this multi-billion-dollar enterprise. So because of that, these competitors, these athletes who live this lifestyle, have a chance to tap into opportunities to connect their audiences with those companies and help them grow customers and all that sort of thing. So that's become a big part of it. Also, social media has had a profound impact.
Profound effect.
I mean, we probably know of each other because of social media.
So I saw you on social media. When I saw that you were the president of the Olympia, I said, I got to have this guy.
Yeah, and so that's opened a lot of doors for the competitors as well. They're able to no longer be media dependent. They're the editor-in-chief of their own
networks.
We
all have our own networks today.
That's right. And so that's really paved the way for a lot of revenue. You have people who live the lifestyle but never even walk on stage who are making a ton of money. We have champions in our community who are very wealthy because of this sort of second revelation of what's become of the world of connecting and networking and social media and all that sort of thing.
Well, I never understood, I never understood how ignorant so many in the world can be, even at the top of like the supposed food chain. You know, the athletes, and especially these strength athletes, that not just were interested in, you know, being 350 pounds and lifting 1,000 pounds, but who focused on developing muscle, developing a mind-muscle connection, talked about the diet and the lifestyle. They were decades ahead of the rest of science. They were talking about the negative impacts of the steroids, of hormones. And meanwhile, today, I get testosterone from CVS because my doctor prescribes it and the insurance company pays. And yet they were bad-mouthing it and all sorts of things. But before we get into all of that, I want to understand, who is Dan Solomon? I mean, you're president of what I consider one of the most iconic events that happens in the world, to me. You understand? To me, you have achieved a level of success that I don't want to say I envy, because I'm not an envious guy, but I admire.
Well,
who are you?
Yeah, you know,
where'd you come from?
It's funny to hear that, and I really appreciate you saying that. And to hear that, to me, is a credit to all the people, from Joe Weider and Ben Weider to those who've held my position prior to me, and just the way the world has embraced strength, fitness, that whole lifestyle, longevity, all of it. It's really profoundly meaningful to me to hear the way you describe the thing that I oversee, because that is a byproduct of a lot of people who have really gone far and above to build this community, to build this culture, to create this this community of inspiration and motivation and all these things that live inside of it. A lot of people are quick to talk about the physiques that walk on those stages, but it goes so beyond that. But I know you're asking in this case about me. I'm a guy who graduated college.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Miami. I'm a South Florida guy. Moved out to the Northeast, met my wife. We built a life down here. We have a son.
Did you go to college up north?
I did. I went to school. I went to the University of Hartford in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I also attended the University of Miami down here in Coral Gables.
I don't want to say anything about going to party schools, but Danny, you are, you mastered fun in your life.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed opportunities to experience a number of different things, even professionally. When I got out of school, I started with a career, and you'll appreciate this, in financial planning. I got all of my licenses, my Series this and my
Series
insurance
7.
licenses, and I got all of those things.
Where did you get all that?
And down in
but what firm? I'm asking.
In Florida, I worked for a company called Lincoln Financial Group.
I know Lincoln.
And this was back before finances were dealt with a full-blown asset allocation model. This was back when things were changing. It was kind of going from being a stock brokerage mindset to a full portfolio management approach.
Understand.
And I kind of walked into it during that time. And I learned a few things about money and about managing funds and the various investment instruments that were available. I never became elite at it. I didn't love it. I appreciated it. And then somewhere along the way, I held a handful of other jobs. And then one day, I had an opportunity in 1998 to attend the Mr. Olympia. It was being held that year in New York City at the Madison Square Garden, the Paramount Theater, right inside that facility.
I remember that, just so you know.
Which I know you told me before we started. You told me that your last Olympia was, I think you said 97?
Well, the 97 is where I got engaged.
Right, was where you got engaged, which was when a guy named Dorian Yates won it for the final time.
He's still Dorian. What's up, shaking, baby? I've been told I look like him a little bit.
So that's a great comparison. So then we moved to 98. The event takes place in New York City. It was the night a guy named Ronnie Coleman won the event for the first time. I happened to be in town on business, and I figured out a way. I still don't remember how I did it, but I figured out a way to get myself a ticket. I was in town by myself to get a ticket to attend the 1998 Mr. Olympia. And I was always a fan. I read the magazines. I knew who the guys were. And I walked across the street. I attended the show. I got some sort of a VIP.
Oh, you know what? I was there. I just remembered. I was there.
Okay.
Yes, I was. Isn't that funny? I went with a friend of mine.
It was there. It was the night Ronnie and Flex Wheeler was supposed to win the show.
Flex Wheeler was amazing that night. Amazing.
And there was another guy named Nasser El Sambadi who was
a beast.
Nasser
was a beast.
So they were battling. But anyway, so I attended this show, and I just remember sitting there in row 30, And I was so blown away by the experience, by the response from the crowd, by the production, by the presence of these extraordinary men and women on that stage. It was a remarkable experience. And I left there thinking to myself, I think I want to be a part of this. I just don't know how. And later that night, I attended some kind of a after event banquet of some sort. It was small, nothing like it is today.
They sold tickets in those days for like the after event.
That's right.
I actually went too.
Okay, so maybe we were in the same
like
room.
$60. It was so ridiculous.
Yes.
And you go in and it was too crowded and there was no food.
That
was
same pass now costs about $1,200.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But I met a guy, he was a local bodybuilder who happened to be competing that night at the Mr. Olympia. His name's Darren Charles.
I know Darren.
Is a great bodybuilder.
He trains people here in Florida.
That's right, from Trinidad.
I trained him once. He trained with me once in Fort Lauderdale.
He's a great bodybuilder, tremendous genetics, a beautiful physique. So
Beautiful.
we got to talking, and I decided that I wanted him to be my trainer. So Darren and I...
That's why you look so good, bro.
Thank you, bro. So he hires me to, or I hire him rather,
right.
to be my trainer. And about a year into the relationship, he and his wife at the time, they were having some challenges on the business side of bodybuilding. So they knew that I had a little bit of a business background. They brought me to their house and they said, hey, we really want to figure out a way to get Darren an endorsement deal. And these are the companies we're looking at. And I said, well, what's the biggest one that you want? He goes, we would love for him to be a Weider athlete. That was the big thing back in those days.
Really?
Yes.
And he wasn't?
He wasn't at that time. Now, this was before he had started winning. He wasn't really that well known. He had just come over from Trinidad with about 10 bucks in his pocket.
He was like short and everything. He wasn't a big guy.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I, without knowing better, pick up the phone and I call the Weider offices. I, naively asked to speak to Joe Weider. Leave a message for him, and about a day or so later, sure enough, the great Joe Weider calls me back.
He returns all his calls. You don't know that.
I was an absolute nobody.
Yep.
And he called me back, and we spent about an hour on the phone talking about all things bodybuilding. It was a conversation that I'll never forget. It undeniably changed my life. And in that conversation, I managed to get Darren a contract because Joe was very familiar with Darren. By the time the conversation was over, I got Darren's endorsement contract, and I got hired to be a bit of a writer for Muscle and Fitness magazine.
I love it.
And I wrote a column called Bodybuilding 101, which was just basically a basic idea of how to kind of get going in the gym and how to train different body parts. So I did that for a short time. And then they started bringing bodybuilding to pay-per-view and to television in different ways. And there was a small-time production company that was looking for somebody to host these events. And we had a mutual friend who recommended me. So I auditioned for it. I got the part of being sort of the host of these events. So I spent the next dozen or so years.
That's how I knew your name.
There you go.
I didn't know how I knew your name. Now I know.
As host of Mr. Olympia, Arnold Schwarzenegger's event in Columbus, I used to host that for television.
Went 10 years in a row.
There you go. So that's what I started doing, and along the way, I started to connect and learn my way around the space. And I was hired to be an editor, a publisher, a writer. I was an executive producer of a movie, as I mentioned earlier, called Bigger, which was the story of Joe Weider and how he came to create this industry. It starred Julianne Hough and Victoria Justice and Tom Arnold, and it was a great cast. It had a short run in the theater, didn't do much in the theater. Ended up landing on HBO for a few years. Your listeners, your viewers can watch the show, can watch the movie now. It's called Bigger. You can get it.
Just Bigger.
It's called Bigger. You can get it on Amazon Video.
Prime Video,
or you can get it on iTunes. You got to pay for it. It's a few
Apple
bucks.
TV. I already do, so I'm going to Bigger.
But it's a great.
It said produced by Dan Solomon.
I was a co-executive producer.
Okay.
There was a producer named Steve Jones and Eric Weider, the son of Ben Weider, the co-founder of all this. He executive produced it. He funded it, and it was a really good opportunity to tell the world about how all of this came to be. And so it starts from like the 40s when a couple young boys were trying to create these little pamphlets that eventually became a magazine empire that would later sell for $350 million.
Unbelievable.
And he started the Olympia in 1965, and it kind of talks about that. They bring Arnold over from Austria.
Correct.
We talk about that. And it's a movie with a little creative license, but nonetheless, it's an opportunity for people out there who don't know how this world came to be. And of course, today we could do a sequel because where we stop at the movie takes us to about the 1970s. And of course, present day, it's a massive industry.
It calls for a sequel, bro.
Yeah, it really does.
I love it.
Really
maybe
does.
Raw Media will have a hand in that.
Perhaps.
I love it. So keep going. I want to know more about you.
Yeah. So then along the way, I kind of became the guy for many years that company owners and event producers would call when they just wanted some insight on how I would see certain elements of their product launches, of their events. They would call me, they would pick my brain, and we would have good conversations, and it was a great opportunity to sort of be a part of all kinds of processes. And then shortly after the 2018 Olympia, the Olympia has always been a great event, but there was some aspects of the economics of the Olympia that the owner of the time, American Media is the company that publishes big time
National Enquirer,
grocery store tabloids
David
like
Pecker,
Us Weekly,
AMI.
National Enquirer, OK, Life and Style, all these magazines.
He was an investor in my last company, Sky Capital, before I went away.
Okay, so you know David. And so David acquired the Olympia, I think it was 03, 04, for a bunch of money, and all of the media that ties to it. Because remember, with the Olympia, what makes it different is it's not just a weekend event. It's a year-round media portfolio that includes high-profile flagship media like Muscle and Fitness magazine and other popular titles in that space.
Flex.
Yeah, so I was hired by them to run the Olympia at that time because the idea is, I had explained to David, it's a great event, and it's always been a great event. It always will be. But the Olympia needed to stop being treated as a weekend event and needed to start being treated
be more, bro.
as a year-round brand.
Correct.
As a global symbol of achievement
It's
in
the
the world.
Super Bowl.
That's right. So we sort of laid out a plan to make the Olympia a year-round conversation. And it resulted in a very robust global licensing program. The word Olympia means something to companies around the world who want to sell equipment, apparel, nutrition products, who want to connect with an audience, who want to be aligned with the best of the best. So that's what we've been able to do since I came in 2018 and became its president and was hired to do that job. And the event was bought in 2019 by a great guy named Jake Wood, who's based out of Arizona. And Jake is as real deal, pure bodybuilding fan as they come. He basically rescued the Olympia from a corporate environment and brought it into an environment where it was really at home. And I've been able to work alongside Jake and a great leadership team to sort of elevate and grow the Olympia. It has become one of the more popular events and more popular. For starters, bodybuilding itself has become one of the most popular sports in certain countries in the world. We had a champion named Hadi Choopan, who's from Iran. And bodybuilding happens to be one of the top 2 most popular sports in that country. And you go throughout the Middle East, and the same holds true.
Right.
The number 2 country that supports the fitness and bodybuilding movement is Brazil. You go down to Brazil, and it is incredible, and it's almost moving, the number of people that live this lifestyle and really connect with the energy. And when I come or when champions of the Olympia show up, it really matters to them because they've really embraced this lifestyle, and it's become incredibly popular for both men and women in many, many countries. So we've been able to do some great work, and now, of course, we are an annual event, which we have been for the entire time, and we'll bring the event this year in October to Las Vegas.
What hotel?
It's going to be at Resorts World. Resorts World is on the Las Vegas Strip. It's only about 4 years old. They spent about $4 billion to build this place. It is an astonishingly impressive property with the height of technology.
I'm so excited.
It's really a great place to have the event, and we're very proud to be there.
There was a crummy hotel they had in Vegas years ago.
Yeah.
My last Olympia, I was wrong. But it wasn't 97 is where I got engaged. My life changed. I became married,
Sure.
and we had children. But I went to the one in the Garden. I'll never forget that. And then I went to another one or two in the 2000s. I went to so many. I keep forgetting.
We were at Mandalay Bay for a few years.
There was another spot.
Yeah, we were at a hotel called, you're thinking of the Orleans.
Yeah, Orleans was terrible.
Yeah, so the Orleans was appeal. Here's why we were at the
Triple H
Orleans.
was hosting one
Sure.
year.
And here's why we were at the Orleans. So one of the things that's really tricky about our event, just focusing on the business of what we do for a second, it's tricky because we are a massive footprint event. And by that, what I mean is we require 6 or 7 days of massive facilities. We need a convention center of at least 500,000 to 600,000 square feet. We need a theater or an arena that can hold many, many people.
20,000, 15, 20,000.
That would be nice to get there.
It should be to that point.
Right. But what happens is usually we can find a convention center, but we can't find a venue for our show, or we can't find a sizable enough room block for because we require 10,
It's a year in
15,000
advance.
room.
It's a full year in advance.
It's a full year, so and we put on press conferences, we put on amateur
Correct.
Olympiads, meet the Olympians. It's a multi-layered event that we put on, and it's very, very challenging to find a place that can host us. The reason why the Orleans was desirable, because, well, you're probably speaking of the Orleans Hotel, which you're right. It was not the, as they would say, sexiest hotel in
Terrible.
Vegas, but the Orleans Arena was
Right.
a very formidable, respected arena, which enabled us to sell about 10, 11,000
There was
tickets.
a big, no
a
question.
great place. So, yeah, that's the challenge it's always been. Now, here we are at a beautiful hotel. Now, I'll paint the other
love
side of it. We're at a beautiful
When you
hotel.
said 4 years old, I got excited.
However,
You have to go to different places.
the theater at the Resorts World only holds about 5,000 people.
No good.
Which is no good, and we know that.
For a press conference,
Which is
the
why,
press conference.
right? So there's always, wherever you go, whether you get the room block and you don't get the venue space, or you get the convention center space
Right.
and you don't get the room, whatever it is, it's really tricky for us to have our event. There are other events that put their shows on in convention centers and they do things like that. We feel like with the status of what the Olympia represents, it needs to be in a world-class staging facility, and that's a lot of times what our priorities are. But yeah, every few years it takes on a different look, and right now we're pretty excited to be where we are.
I understand the challenge. I love it. I love what we're talking about here, because I look back on my life and I can look at my life. You used a great word, lifestyle. Yeah. So to me, the Olympia represents a lifestyle. It means training all your body, head to toe, during the week, eating clean, getting enough sleep, getting supplements in to your life. And to me, it's a lifestyle.
Yep.
And then you check in for the big event. Obviously, I was not a professional, but I knew a lot of the pros with good friends of mine. We talked about, Steve Kuko sat in this chair not too long ago. Dear friend of mine. There's so many. Jay Cutler. I mean,
yeah, both of those guys are great champions. Of course,
friends.
Jay Cutler, for those of your listeners who don't know, won the Mr. Olympia 4 times.
Correct.
Steve Kukla, a great champion of many shows.
Who's our current champion at the Olympia?
But the Mr. Olympia was won this year by a gentleman named Samson Dauda. He became the 19th man to hold the title. Samson hails from Nigeria, now living in the UK. A real classy, massive champion, and he's going to come in and try to defend the title in a few months. But
Phil Heath is retired.
Phil Heath is a 7-time champion. He's retired from the stage,
Right.
But he's going on and he's doing all kinds of
Amazing
great things. He's being recognized at the White House, and
Trump is talking about him.
exactly. So Phil is really made the most, and we appreciate any of our champions who can grow out and connect with new audiences. Those are my favorite champions.
Do they all come back? Are they all willing to lend a hand from time to time?
Yeah, most of them. Some of them have moved on, to be honest with you.
Right.
I think there's certain elements, especially some of the guys from back in the day. I think the sport, it's a hard sport. It's a hard lifestyle to live.
Brutal.
And I think a lot of them didn't walk away feeling the warm and fuzzies.
Look at Ronnie right now. It's terrible.
And it's funny you mentioned Ronnie. Ronnie's somebody who is obviously physically, it's taken his toll in a big way on him, but he's mentally so inspiring. He's so tough. He still shows up. He still supports. He's still filled with so much positivity.
Yeah.
He still says to this day, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would not have changed a thing.
Maybe those 800-pound squats I don't know about, but you
But
know.
he was a tremendous champion. But you talk about the lifestyle and what makes bodybuilding, whether you're a competitor or just a person who supports it or lives this lifestyle, what makes it different, it's not about having something, it's about becoming something.
I get it.
And that's what makes this community so different. And it's what makes people, there's so many times, some of the most successful people I know, some of the guys who have done so well, like yourself, they tell these stories about how they started off in bodybuilding. They started off competing. And I always say, and I say this all the time, and for those who have heard me, they'll be hearing this story for the second or third time, but I will say it to you because I've never spoken to you about this. When you decide to take on the lifestyle of bodybuilding, and you decide to go through what it takes, the discipline, the suffering, the sacrifice that it takes to walk on a competitive bodybuilding stage, it is a commitment unlike any other. You walk out onto that stage in front of an audience of hundreds or thousands.
And you basically get naked.
And you're basically half naked in front of a panel of judges who don't
And
even know
10,000
you,
other people.
and you don't know them, and they're there to judge you and scrutinize you and pick apart your weaknesses.
Judge is the word. They're there to judge you.
Correct. And if you are able to do that thing,
You're already a champion to
no
me.
matter what you do next in your life is going to be infinitely easier because you've gone through that. And you can speak to that because you did that as a starting point, as a foundation to your life, and you went on and made millions of dollars, made money for other people, and have had tremendous success. And now you're having that same success with what you're doing with the show and other things. And that's what makes bodybuilding so cool. My phone is filled with phone numbers of people who have started with that same story. They decided to
mindset.
Get into bodybuilding, and that mindset has built $500 million companies with massive exits, and they've had tremendous success in their life. And it all started with their love and their capacity to take on the bodybuilding lifestyle.
Well, I teach this. I taught this on Wall Street, and now I'm doing it a little later in life, but I have a lot of experience, good, bad, and ugly. But it takes a desire to be great.
Yep.
If you're a young person, young man, young woman, you're starting out in your life, and you want to know what to do, call me. But what I would tell you, you start, that alarm clock goes off, and it starts with the first thing you put in your mouth. I talked to you about my morning elixir that heals me from the inside out because I'm going through some things, and I've been through a whole long mishigas. John doesn't want me to tell that story, right? I'm not going to. All I'm saying is when you have the desire to improve yourself, whether it's in business, whether it's financially, whether it's you just want to be more popular because you're in high school, whatever spot you are in life, it has to start with some sort of discipline and a mindset. And the Olympia mindset, the bodybuilding mindset, is something that I latched onto.
Yeah.
I wanted more from life. I wanted to look better. I wanted women to be attracted to me. I wanted men to look up to me. I wanted to have more endurance than the average guy that peters out at 5 o'clock and I'm still going strong 2 hours later. And a lot of it starts with this discipline and this mindset. And if you're looking to improve yourself, these are complicated things. And I'm not one of these great thinkers. That's not who I am. I'm a very linear thinker. I'm not a conceptual guy. And I need to attach myself to something that I feel like is tried and true, that I could just say, this is what I'm going to do. So you know what I did? I subscribed to Muscle and Fitness. I subscribed to Flex. And I just started to read stories by a guy named Dan Solomon. And I understood bodybuilding 101 like you just shared.
Yeah, and it's so amazing to hear
lifestyle.
that. And what's cool about it, just to kind of double down on what you said, some people will say, well, I don't want to look like Mr. Olympia.
Don't worry about it. I say don't worry about it.
Well, don't worry about it. You won't. But to them,
Not
I
gonna
always say it's not about looking like Mr. Olympia. It's about learning from Mr. Olympia.
And it's the feeling like Mr. Olympia.
It's about being inspired by Mr. Olympia. It's about sitting down and getting to learn and understand the journey of a Mr. Olympia. Because when you peel away the layers, it's the story that makes all of this. The physiques and the muscle that lays beneath the skin is only an ancillary part. And that will surprise some people out there because they think about, they immediately look at the image and then they kind of move on from it. But once you get past that and you understand what drives these individuals, what they've overcome, a lot of people are doing this because they walk into a gym for the first time because they want to overcome a serious medical issue. They just had a quadruple bypass and they want to just get healthy enough to dance at their daughter's wedding.
I love it.
They want to overcome obesity. Maybe there's a kid in the gym who might not look the part. You might kind of walk past him and say, that kid isn't serious about it. But maybe he's there for the first time today because he got bullied at school and he's trying to become stronger and he's trying to give himself some swagger and some more discipline and the ability to go ahead and to carry himself in a different way and to stick up for himself and to walk into a room and feel like he matters or she matters. And those kinds of things are that's what's going on in the gym. So I say to anybody out there, don't measure this community by what Mr. Olympia looks like or how relatable that is to you. Understand that Mr. Olympia, if you sit down to talk to him or Miss Olympia or Miss Bikini Olympia or Fitness Olympia or Wellness Olympia or any of the divisions, you will find a person who is far wiser than you could ever imagine. One of the greatest misconceptions of an elite level bodybuilder is that, they're just a dumb bodybuilder. We hear things like that all the time.
It's crazy.
These folks are borderline medical professionals. Their capacity to understand physiology, musculature, nutrition, health, and all of the things that go with that is mind-boggling.
Staggering.
It really is staggering, and it really goes a long way towards making me stay true to this community, because I want to be surrounded by smart people. I want to be surrounded by inspiring, motivational people. I couldn't do this all these years if I wasn't. And I can tell everybody out there is watching, and I'll look right into the camera and I'll tell you that these folks who compete in this lifestyle, they're bright, they're inspiring, and they have the capacity to do things mentally that most people could not even imagine. And these are people that should be looked up to. And they should be appreciated for that element in a way that goes far beyond the biceps, the six-pack abs, the sweeping quads, and the V-taper lats. It's so much more than that.
Well, let me tell you something that I found very interesting, because, you know, we talk about the lifestyle, right? We talk about the things you do, right? The mindset, right? You get up in the morning, what you eat, what you drink, how you allocate your time. It's very time-consuming if you want this lifestyle.
Yep.
You have to show up. You have to show out. You have to do things.
It's not golf where you take a golf lesson for an hour and go home
It's a whole
get back to living.
It's a lifestyle. But, you know, the golf has a lifestyle, too. There's a lifestyle to that. I don't want to compare contrast, but I want to say like this. Here's the part which we haven't gotten into, and I think is really important for the audience to understand. One of the things that I love about the lifestyle is because I'm a guy with a propensity to have fun, to enjoy life, to try things. It's not about so much exactly what you have to do to be an Olympia or to live this life. The things that you can't do, the things that you have to sacrifice. You know, you're not snorting cocaine and staying up all night. You're not running from rave to rave every weekend.
Well, and you're using the extreme things. Let's just focus on the normal things. You're not going out for dinner with your buddies on Friday night after work. You're not going to happy hour.
You're cooking your food on Sunday for the week.
You're getting your rest. You're recovering. You're focused on your supplementation. You're spending money in areas. By the way, being healthy is far more expensive than not being healthy.
Yeah.
Driving through McDonald's is far less expensive than going to Fresh Market, right?
100%.
So
Stevie Kuklo, you know, my dear friend,
Sure.
comes here from Dallas for the weekend. He was attending Dan Bongino's wedding. I mean, his surprise 50th birthday. Surprise 50th birthday party up in Palm Beach Gardens. And he comes in and he flies in, I think, on a Friday night. The party was Saturday night. He comes here Saturday morning. Stevie's not competing competitively now. He's not. He does, you know, what he does, but... You know, he comes in, I'm out of shape, I'm fat, I'm there, all these different things, right? He has all his food. He cooked all his food and came up with it, but he's not competing.
Right.
And I made him take his shirt off because I'd do this for anybody, but I pressured him into it. We used to have pose downs when I was more fit, you know, in my house when he used to stay with me in Boca years ago. And, I mean, it doesn't look like you can't find you can't pinch an ounce of fat off this guy. He's still a beautiful looking man.
Yeah.
And he has a son now.
Yeah, Steve has had, because he's not competing anymore, a stage presence, really, second to none. And it's funny because there's been a few guys like Steve along the way. They're not common. The tall, big.
The big boy.
Yeah. Those
6
guys,
feet, 300 pounds.
Right. And it's funny because those guys who look that way seldom become Mr. Olympia.
Correct.
Because there's certain advantages to being more compact.
Of course.
It's easier to build
That's why
an
Arnold
elite
was
physique.
such a freak.
An anomaly,
almost.
right? Yeah, no, for sure. Our current champion, Samson Dauda, is a big guy, but it's a unique thing to get a guy who's around 6 feet tall to
He's a big. He's
carry
too
himself
thick almost. He's like too thick.
Yeah, and a lot of times those guys are the best spokespeople for the sport as well.
He's a beautiful man, Steve. But the point I make is he's not even competing, but he has the wisdom
Yep.
to know what's good and what's bad. The processed foods, the shit they put in, how easy it is to eat too big a portion. And he's in father now, and him and his wife cook food for their son. They won't give him food from the store that you and I would buy, or maybe not you, but I buy and all of us consume and stuff, thinking we're buying organic from Whole Foods. Bullshit. They cook their food, you know, on a Sunday for the week. It's packaged up, and they take what they take, and even his snacks. He came in here, takes out his bag, and he has a snack. He's not eating something that I have. I said, let me get you something. Let me pick something up. A piece of candy. What is a piece of candy?
Isn't it wild when you watch that level of dedication and discipline? And he's not, as you mentioned, he's not even doing it
Not
for the
even
stage
in
anymore.
it right now.
And you mentioned that he called himself fat. We use the term, in the bodybuilding world, it's funny. The term fat has become this strange term of endearment. We hear people call each other fat, tongue in cheek, as if to suggest you're no longer 4.5% body fat. You're now carrying 7% body fat.
Exactly.
So you're fat. And it's funny to hear two big bodybuilders refer to each other as fat.
It's hysterical.
But nonetheless, what's not hysterical is the discipline. And it's so real and it's so powerful to be around it. And that's one of the greatest parts about the global fitness industry is it's an energy unlike any other. You're surrounded by a sea. You come to the Olympia, you walk around the Olympia Expo, or you come to the event, and you're in a sea of people, like-minded folks.
I love it.
Who wake up every morning and eat, breathe, and live this lifestyle.
They want more. They want to be better.
Like at the top of the show, you mentioned it's the World Cup, it's the NBA Finals, it's the World Series. But and I say this often, but if you go to the World Series, for example, or if you go to a UFC match, not one person in the baseball stadium, or very few of them, will ever know what it's like to stare down the barrel of a major league slider, right? They go and they are fans. If you go to a UFC fight, which I was this past week in Vegas.
UFC, the fight world, I want to just say this to you. So is because I got into the fight world.
Right.
I started training and I was pretty good at it because I was a wrestling background and all my weightlifting and bodybuilding stuff helped me in that world as an older guy. But I just want to say one of the things I loved about going to the fights is you have also a lot of like-minded people.
There's more there than the other
anywhere
sports,
else, correct.
For sure. But most people who show up at a UFC event, most people who order an event on pay-per-view, most of them don't actually participate.
Well, no.
They're fans of fighters, and that's fine. But yes, you are right. In that world, there are more than the other sports. And you go to an Olympia or any major fitness or bodybuilding event, and if there's 10,000 people in the audience, or 1,000 or 100, 98% of them are actively
8,500 out of 10,000 look beautiful.
Right.
The women are hot. The guys look great. No, really.
Well, whether they're hot or not, they live the lifestyle.
I love when I hear these bodybuilders. They talk about you could never be more than your genetics.
Right.
You can't be. DNA is DNA. That's just the way it is, right? I'm 5'9". I'm not playing in the NBA. I'm just not going to, be able to compete like that. But how great can I be with my genetics?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much more we can be, but we don't even explore that because there's a level of sacrifice and the commitment that you have to make is astonishing.
Yeah.
And even if you just make some commitment, you get back 10 times what you put in as far as confidence, as far as energy, health, wellness, all these different things.
And at its most basic idea, one of the reasons why getting old can be challenging is because as we get older, our muscle atrophies. We lose 100%. Muscle as we get older. That's part of getting old, right? Growth hormone levels decrease and your body starts having less muscle. That's why you become
density, lung capacity,
all that stuff. So that's why when you get older, you become frail. So it's only common sense logic to put as much reasonably healthy muscle on your frame as you can.
Resistance training.
Right. So this way, as you get older, you have an advantage. The scoreboard is in your favor. So as you start to lose muscle, it's like, take yourself, for example. Is it okay if I ask you how old you are on your show?
I am. I'll be 68 in 2 weeks.
You'll be 68, and you have, I'm sitting across from you right now, you're still jacked, you still have big arms, you still have vascularity in your forearms, you still look like a bodybuilder.
And I'm in terrible shape for me.
By your standard, that may be true, but you're still better than 9 out of 10 people your age.
And I can perform better in many things.
And it's because of the foundation that you built and the muscle that you put on. One thing about those of us who are in this lifestyle, this community, we're very hard on ourselves, right? We're very quick to pick ourselves apart, but I think that's what makes it work. I think we are driven by that. I think it's that expectation of self that drives us to get to the gym when we don't really want to, or eat the right things. And my diet lately has become far from perfect. It's not even close. In fact, I'm probably at a place now where I too need to tackle it and start to lock down.
Tell you,
but I appreciate that. But I can tell you, being around people like you and those people who are in our community, it really keeps us in check.
The competitive fires get stoked.
Right. And it's positive. It's not a vanity game. It really isn't. A lot of people think this is a vanity game. It's not. It's that we have access to information and people, the best coaches, the best body transformational experts, the best
nutrition coaches,
athletes, the best, all of it. It's all lives here. So if you want to immerse yourself in a sea of knowledge and insight and experience, and what's also happening now is we're seeing a bridge being built between the world of fitness and the world of wellness and longevity. And make no mistake about it,
no question,
those communities are not the same. Okay, wellness and lifestyle has operated in a commerce environment completely separate from the fitness industry. If you ever go to a wellness event, there's some great ones you put on. I was at one a while back. Of course, you know Dr. Bob Goldman. He puts on his A4M, and it's a great gathering of all things longevity, wellness, and that whole community. And it's comprised of patent holders and all kinds of company leaders and investors, people who are getting involved in the latest innovations in wellness, whether it's red light therapies or whether it's different cocktails that are aimed to keep you younger, fitter, stronger.
The IVs.
And all of it, right. And it's become very trendy and it's become very evolved. But when you walk around those events, you don't see a lot of people in the fitness community.
But they're into something now.
But now we're starting to discover each other because both sides need each other.
And the people in the fighting world also coming in now because you need the strength training.
That's
and
right.
then you also need the fitness and the wellness.
That's right.
It's really all just about
it's
all
connecting.
positive.
And even
there's another word I haven't heard you use, and you're so good, Dan. You're such a great ambassador for this event and for this sport. Your demeanor, your ability to explain and sort of disseminate information is second to none that I've heard. And I'm a tough judge like that. One of the greatest benefits of this lifestyle is the cumulative effect. It's cumulative. So you go through phases where, you're good for 6 months or a year. You fall off the wagon. You're going through an issue. You're working too hard, a million things. We all have excuses, right? And then you get back into it. But it's like my North Star. It's like a compass for me. It's when, whether I'm doing good, whether I'm doing bad, whether I'm going through stuff, whether I'm not, I was in prison. Here, things happen in life. You are not your circumstances, but circumstances. I live in God's world, not my own. And that's what happens. You never know. And but it's my North Star, meaning, so all right, now I'm going to start again. I find myself starting again almost every year. I hate to say it lately. However, it has a cumulative effect. It's not, the things that you did are not thrown in the garbage. You fall off the wagon, you go through, you gain weight, you eat badly, all these different things. And all of a sudden you look in the mirror and you say, what the hell, I'm 20 pounds overweight, I don't feel great. Maybe you've been smoking, maybe you've been drinking, maybe you've just been working too hard, maybe you got sick. Shit happens in life. But if you keep going back, if you keep that in your life, you're guaranteed to have a better life.
Yeah, and I think you said that so beautifully. And I appreciate the kind of things you said earlier, but it's a really, in this world, I don't care what you do for a living, what industry you're in, how you make your living, accountability is everything. Holding yourself accountable. And there is no community, there is no lifestyle, there is no discipline that more embodies accountability.
I love it.
The way fitness and bodybuilding does. And it's, like you said, you can stray away from it, but because you've gone through it, because you know what it's like to transform yourself, because you've done it at one point in your life, you now have a roadmap and an understanding for how your body responds. It's all about cause and effect. It's understanding how one action impacts another action. And it's all about how sloppy nutrition impacts you, not just physically, but impacts your capacity to think, impacts the bandwidth of your brain, impacts your ability to sleep and get proper rest, impacts your patience in your relationship and how you perform at home in your relationship, how it impacts your performance at work, professionally. People who manage their health, who train, who live this lifestyle, have a larger bandwidth to earn and to be successful and to have the capacity to grow in all parts of their life. And that's why this is such a unique discipline. This is why everybody should stick some toe in this water, because there, to some extreme, whether you want to take it to an extreme or not, that's up to you. But there is no person I don't care what your limitation is. We see people in the gym all the time of, whether they are borderline obese, whether they are unable to walk. They come to the gym. My favorite division, a lot of people don't know about this, my favorite competitive division in the world of bodybuilding and fitness is the wheelchair bodybuilding division.
Wow.
These competitors are extraordinary. Their physiques are remarkable. The way they train is unlike any other. The things they have to overcome. Just imagine trying to gain muscle on your upper body without having use of your lower body. It's wildly complicated, and it requires a level of commitment that no other discipline has. And if you come to the Olympia and you watch, say, the wheelchair Olympia, because we have that among our 11 competitive divisions, and you watch the way these warriors come out onto the stage and they present their physiques, and these guys have bodies that are extraordinary. They're not extraordinary because they're in a wheelchair. They're extraordinary, period.
They're just extraordinary.
They're just extraordinary, and they are true world-class athletes. So that's why I say nobody has an excuse to not show up. I don't care if you're busy, get up earlier. I don't care if you don't have access to a gym, you can train at home. There's so many ways to commit to this.
You do push-ups.
That's right.
There's no excuse.
That's right.
I love it. I just love it. Now, I want to talk about current day Olympia. You said Jake Wood?
Yep.
Now tell us, who is Jake Wood, how this evolved, all these different things.
Yeah, so Jake Wood's a really interesting guy. Like I said, he eats, breathes, and lives this lifestyle, understands it, has a real caring sense for people who are involved in bodybuilding. He wants to make sure that competitors have opportunities to compete for the most amount of money possible. This is why he gives away the sizable amounts of money that he gives. To give some context, this year at the Olympia, we gave away right about $2 million.
It's real money.
Okay, to the lineup. There's no other event in the world that I think even gives away $1 million, right? So that's the role that we represent.
It's huge. It used to be nothing.
Right, and it's an important thing because we need to do that. We also need to get behind and create opportunities for sponsors to benefit, and to make sure that we are effectively connecting enthusiasts to brands and making sure that everybody's winning. Because if the brands and the companies are succeeding, they're providing more economic support to what we're doing. So everybody needs to make sure everybody's happy. It needs to be a true win-win environment. And of course, the big winner has to be the follower, the enthusiast, the fans. We have to make sure we're providing value. People show up to the Olympia. There's nothing like it. There is nothing like, and you mentioned Jake. Jake is a big advocate for this.
Now, let me ask you a question. Jake, I don't know the name. American media, obviously, the big company,
so
National Enquirer, David Pecker.
Right. So they were looking for a buyer. And I knew Jake from various interests that he had in fitness. And Jake had previously owned a company that manufactures parts for airplanes. And his company, he owned it with his father, and his company was acquired a decade or so back, maybe more. And he has used those resources to really invest into the fitness.
But I mean, it's like a couple
industry.
$100 million.
It was a significant transaction. The details I don't fully know.
It wasn't reported like in the press.
But it was a very handsome transaction, a byproduct of his.
Could it be a few $100 million?
He and his. I would imagine it could be. Yeah.
Wow, that's real money.
And he and his father really worked hard to build something pretty amazing. And to hear Jake speak of their family business is pretty inspiring. But they sold that business, and then Jake really just dove into his passion for fitness.
He's
and
a bodybuilder.
And he's a bodybuilder at heart. He really tries to figure out any possible way to advocate for the competitor. It's very important to him. A lot of people try to do their part, but very few of them really walk the walk the way Jake does. And he's done some things that has put money in competitors' pockets in ways that really nobody else has ever.
Is he involved in the business?
He's involved. Yeah, we speak daily on the production of the Olympia.
I love it.
And he is very involved in making sure that the event is presented in a certain way. Because here's what we know for sure. Everybody will have different opinions about places around the world. There's events from Dubai to Los Angeles, throughout the Middle East and Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean. There's events everywhere, and we're very proud.
Qualifying events, right?
Those are qualifying events, and they're all great. But one thing that the Olympia represents, the Olympia whether we like it or not, sets the tone. And the more we tend to put into our stage production, the more we see other promoters putting into their stage productions. The more prize money tends to get given out throughout the industry. So we've recognized that the way we do things has a significant impact. So Jake recognizes that it's our responsibility, his, mine, our team's responsibility to continue to raise the bar, because everything comes up behind it and grows. And the better job we do at inspiring people to want to be a part of this lifestyle. There was a time where you would go to a bodybuilding show and you'd say, this is boring, just watching guys walk on stage with a spotlight, hitting poses. It was cool, it was inspiring, but it was kind of boring after a while. You know what I'm talking about.
You have to inject entertainment
into
these things.
So we have really taken that to heart, and it's like a rock concert.
Now, I know a lot about this, so I want to make sure that the audience understands, because this is, to me, near and dear to my heart. Right, so I want my audience, I want my editor, I want people that follow me to understand a little bit more about this event. Unlike, let's say, football or baseball, this is an international event.
Sure.
You just said that the current Mr. Olympia he's African.
Yeah, well, he was from Nigeria by way of the United Kingdom.
That's where that boxer was, by the way, the heavyweight champion that I sparred with.
There you go.
Samuel, I can't think of his last name, but he was only champion very brief period.
Our prior champion to him, we had a guy named Big Ramy, who hailed from Egypt by way of Kuwait. We had Hadi Chupan, who I mentioned earlier.
So we've had turnover since Phil Heath.
Yeah, there hasn't been a dominant multi-year scenario in quite some time. In fact, the last 3 Olympias, I think, have been won by 3 different competitors. Maybe 4.
Guys.
Maybe 4,
I think
actually.
4, yeah.
Yeah, I think 4 in a row we've had a new champion.
So this is a worldwide event. So people are going to say, well, how do I get to the Olympia stage? How do people from different parts of the world end up? How many guys total actually entered into the Olympia?
Here's the journey. Tell
us about how many people get onto the Olympia stage.
So
let's go backwards.
So spanning the all 11 divisions.
Now let's just talk about the men.
Okay.
The heavyweight.
The main Mr. Olympia division, the one that Arnold competed in.
Correct.
These days you'll have about 20 or so competitors competing in that division. Now, I'm going to explain to the folks at home how this works.
Okay.
There's an organization called the NPC. The NPC is the big amateur organization around the world, but it certainly dominates here in the United States to a market share of about 95% of all amateur bodybuilding here in the U.S. takes place within the sanctioning body that is the National Physique Committee. The
sanctioning body, that's important to note.
So there are, on given Saturday nights throughout the country, throughout the world, there are NPC events.
Local events all over the place.
Local events. If you are fortunate enough to perform well enough at one of those events, you become what they call nationally qualified. There are a smaller list of national level events, the NPC Nationals, the NPC USAs, amateur Olympia events. Events of that nature are what we call national events. If you compete in a national event and you perform well, then you have the opportunity to become, then you would become a pro.
You get a pro card.
You get a pro card.
You're allowed now to compete in the professional.
Correct. We call it the IFBB Professional League, which is the #1 professional physique organization on the planet. It is the sanctioning body of the Mr. Olympia and other major events.
It's a precursor.
Correct.
So you could win a national tournament and barely not get qualified for the Olympia.
No. So hang on.
You're just a pro at that point.
So once you become nationally qualified and you win a national event or qualify and earn your pro card, you're now in the pro ranks.
Right.
In order to make your way to the Olympia stage as a professional, you have to win a pro show. That qualifies you.
And then get invited in.
Nope. You win
you have to qualify.
There is no invitation. It is black and white. If you win a pro show, you are qualified.
How many pro shows
to compete? There are many.
Just looking for the top men.
In the top men, there might be 150 opportunities around the country to compete.
But you actually have to win.
You have to win.
You have to place first.
You have to win, right. And if you win a pro show,
you get an invitation.
You are now eligible to enter the Mr. Olympia and compete to be the #1 competitor in the world. By the time you make it to the Olympia stage, you have conquered the NPC amateur ranks, you have become nationally qualified, you have performed well at a national level show, you have gotten your pro card, and you have won a pro show. Now you can compete.
So you're like
for the
20
Olympia title.
guys to walk on that stage out of
Tens of thousands that start at the beginning of
and
the year.
worldwide more.
And they'll
probably.
spend year in and year out,
out.
trying to get to that place.
Because one guy could win 5 shows.
That's right.
And so the other guys are eliminated.
That's right.
So, there's a real, I want people to understand that this is really an enormous sport, really.
Well, I even say to our sponsors and exhibitors and companies that support, a lot of times we're quick to focus on Mr. Olympia, right? Mr. Olympia is going to have millions and millions of followers. But you know who also has millions of followers? The girl who finishes 16th in the Bikini Olympia. The guy who finishes 8th in the Classic Physique Olympia. The Classic Physique Olympia, by the way, we haven't talked about it.
Yes.
We had a reigning champion for 6 years. His name is Chris Bumstead. They call him C-Bum. He's one of the most famous bodybuilders on the planet, and he's not even in the main open Mr. Olympia division, and he's got 30 or 40 million
tell us
people.
Why not?
He is
What
not
is special about him?
What makes Chris special, and what we have found draws the most organic, sizable followings. There's a certain value in authenticity. Chris has been willing to put himself out there in the most authentic way. He's highly relatable. Chris is you and me. Chris is every guy. And he's had his struggles, and he's very open about all aspects of professional and personal and family and becoming a father and having hair transplants and being emotional on and off stage and all the things that comprise the realities of being a guy in today's world. Chris has really owned it and embraced it, and people have really connected with his message. And he's also paired that with what happens to be one of the most marketably extraordinary physiques the sport has ever known. He is highly, as they would say, aesthetically pleasing. He has built something that everybody can aspire for, but would like to look like, right?
I understand. And he's not what we would call a freak.
Right. And his look is very marketable.
He's just beautiful. Like a model.
That's right. And companies really connect with him. And he's somebody that when he says he's going to be somewhere, he shows up. When I call up Chris and say my son's baseball team is playing for the state championship, he's the first one to send over a video and wish the team good luck. He's that guy.
He's a beautiful guy.
And he's a great person. And I'm very proud to have been able to oversee the last 6 Olympias where he has won. And
what's the name of his division like?
It's called the Classic Physique Division. And and it's become very popular. And we're proud of that because what we have been able to demonstrate is the Olympia as a brand, as an event, as a symbol of achievement. It's about more than just the Herculean massive bodybuilder. It's about other shapes and sizes. You have the girl who just won the Bikini Olympia. Her name is Laura Lee Chapados. She's also down here in South Florida. You should interview her. And she'll tell you the story about things that she's had to go through to reach the mountaintop and become the best in the world. And those stories are extraordinary. And but the best part about it is all of those divisions represent a different look, a different vibe, a different, body type. And so nowadays it used to be where there was 3 guys in every gym who competed. Now the chances are pretty good that your neighbor or your dental hygienist or your attorney or your kid's 4th grade teacher or anything along those lines has connections to this discipline, to this lifestyle.
I love it.
And it's really growing fast.
I love it because the Olympia just represents sort of owning a title, best in the world. So you're best in the world at a bikini model, maybe a woman's bodybuilding physique, maybe I know that when in the famous movie Pumping Iron, you had Arnold over 6 feet winning his sort of division and then competing against Franco, who was short. They had guys that were shorter, like that. So they break it down to sort of make it more fair. And it's very entertaining, and I love it. And, if you haven't been to a show, you owe it to yourself to go. These bodybuilders come out, and they perform, they flex, they put on a show. Arnold was taking ballet lessons from a teacher in that movie, but, I've seen Vince Taylor, some of the greatest, pose downs, the posing, and at the end when they compete against each other and they go against each other really hard. It's just something to see. It's something to be a part of. But I love what you represent.
Thank you.
And what the Olympia represents. To me, you are sort of a bridge from what was sort of a group of men and then women competing that look great, sort of in a reasonably unorganized fashion. And there was no real spokesperson that could deliver a message as clearly as Dan Solomon has done today. If I had a hat, I'd take it off, because you are so gifted. You know, somebody would say you have a great line of shit. I'm just playing.
Well, no, but they would be right, because it is a lot of that. It's all about, my responsibility is to make sure that as many people as possible are taking a look at what's going on inside our world. My responsibility goes far beyond the Olympia. It's about making people see what's happening in this community, in this lifestyle. And that's the responsibility. And I've always felt that's what makes my approach a little bit different. A lot of event promoters are really focused on growing their events and making their events successful, rightfully so. And that's, of course, a priority of mine as well. But I feel like I'd be remiss, I'd be missing the bigger point if I don't take any opportunity that's available to me, within reason, to promote this community, to promote these extraordinary people who live within this space and occupy this massive sandbox of inspiration and motivation. That's an important thing that comes with the responsibility of overseeing an Olympia event that means so much to so many people. So for me, I'm very proud of it. And when you say those things about me and the work that I do, I'll simply say it's an easy thing to talk about. Because if you get to know what's going on within the world of bodybuilding and fitness, it can move you in a way that makes it easy to express these ideas and to bring a level of authentic passion. And it's something that I'm proud to do, and I hope whoever does it next continues to, carry the baton and inspire as many people as possible to want to walk into a gym for the first time and have their first rep, their first set, their first protein shake, and just evolve and maximize themselves and become the best version of themselves. Because at the end of the day, what bodybuilding is, it's the celebration of that transformative spirit of becoming the best person that you can be in all parts of life. And I'm so proud to have been here today to talk to you about it.
It's amazing. And, when I say that you're a breath of fresh air, you're a bridge, I remember speaking to Joe and Ben and loving this sport. And then they sent me to Wayne to organize, seats and all these different things, hotel rooms and whatnot. And I remember just going to these events. And I'm talking about, I used to go to the Arnold, I went to Night of Champions, and I went to a lot of the NPC events and all these different qualifying events. I was really into the lifestyle, et cetera. I went to bodybuilding camp. But there was nobody that, I looked at it as like a great sport. It was my lifestyle, et cetera. But I remember thinking that there was just nobody that delivers the message. There was no sales guy. There was no guy that bridges the sport and the people that live in the sport to the regular people. There just wasn't that guy or that person, because I'm a talker. I'm a broker. I'm a sales guy. I'm a promoter. I'm calling around, and I think that the sport was, I don't want to say crippled, but it didn't progress the way it should have in the world of TV, media, all the things that I think that could have happened. Speaking with you and meeting you today, I see a really, really super bright future for the Olympia, the event, and the messaging and the lifestyle. After I sit here with you today, I'm building Ross Mandell, Raw Media. This is my brand. I'm going to meet branding people. I'm going to meet a woman that's on TV who's a host. She was a Miami Dolphin cheerleader when she was a kid. She's doing she's a professional at branding and media, messaging and all that. And I think that's what was really missing for a lot of years. You had Arnold, which I think put it on the map. And then I felt like there was... Well,
and that's why these opportunities, even to come here today to talk to you, are so important.
So important.
Because, I can do bodybuilding interviews with bodybuilding media all day, and I'm just going to be talking to the same people all the time. But the most valuable opportunities are when I get a chance to reach out to audiences that might not know about this world, that don't wake up every day thinking about this lifestyle and fitness and bodybuilding and all that sort of thing. So to be able to come here today and talk to you on your show, it's so important. And I'm so grateful. I really am grateful for opportunities like this, because these audiences are so important. The people who listen to your show, who watch your show, many of them are very, very successful. They've achieved in many ways. And I know a lot of them are curious about what's happening here. And I would say to anybody out there, you want to reach out. The easiest way to do that is Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram and DM me at Dan_Solomon_official, and send me a note if you have a company that's looking to be a part of it. If you're just looking to understand a little bit better, I'm not always great about getting back to everybody, but I always do the best that I can. And I really appreciate opportunities to connect with folks who may not. My favorite Olympia attendee is the person, man or female, who is going for the very first time. That is the one that I'm most proud of. And that comes in all shapes and sizes. That comes with kids. That comes with... Correct. It also comes with celebrities. Like you come to the Olympia, and over the years you've seen the Mark Wahlbergs, the Dwayne Johnsons, the Shaquille O'Neals. Yep. They show up, and Arnold, or they come to the events, and they represent a different type of energy. Dave Bautista, they show up and they love this stuff, and they show up early and they stay to the end. We don't pay them to be there. They stay because they want to be there, because they understand the value of what we do. They also want to connect with our audiences, because our audiences, to be fairly candid, the fitness and bodybuilding lifestylist is a relatively affluent person. It's very difficult to be poor and go to the Olympia. Now, granted, we love everybody. We want poor, rich, all shapes, all sizes to be in this lifestyle, because you'll get to where you want to go if you commit to doing this and you commit to understanding the fundamentals of this pursuit. But if you're a company and you're trying to connect with people who really have the horsepower to get behind your brand, the Olympia is a great way to do that. And I say that respectfully. It's not even about trying to sell. It's just it's a part of the marketplace that I think a lot of companies don't fully embrace, that there is not a more passionate customer than there is in the fitness community.
100%. Yeah. I get that. Now, where do you see the Olympia? And where do you see Dan Solomon, let's say, in the next 5 years?
Well, we still have some plans for the Olympia. There's still a lot that I want to do. I have this idea, for starters, that we have the ability, because I've seen the appetite that our fans have for tickets, for seats. They become hugely in demand. So for me personally, I want to start going towards the kind of venues that WWE uses, that UFC might use.
Madison Square Garden.
Major events.
20,000. 20,000.
20, 40, 50,000 seat
now
events.
You're talking.
I think we can
now
do
you're
it.
talking.
So that's a big thing. And then there's also connecting with more prominent companies. I was talking earlier about the endemic categories, endemic equipment, apparel, sports nutrition. That's great. And we're always going to be in that space, because that's our market. But we got to get to a place where bigger companies, companies that aren't maybe natural ties to this world, understand that we are an audience of people who want to live the best possible life and want to live a different kind of lifestyle and have higher expectations and aspirations for ourselves. So I'd like to see other major companies who might not have looked at fitness and bodybuilding on their annual marketing planograms, if you will.
I love it.
And I want them to get behind and get involved with what we're doing, because I can tell you right now, whenever we have a company of all shapes and sizes to the event for the first time, and the way we treat those executives, those CEOs, those leaders, they experience it and they don't leave. They love what it's all about. They love the connections. They love the marketing. They love the networking. They love the content that they get. You walk around an Olympia Expo and you are in a sea of things that you don't see most places.
And it's electric.
It is.
It's electric. You can feel
it's
the energy.
It's a very visceral experience, and you feel it, like you said. And so I encourage, there's times where I'm on the phone with major CEOs of major companies, and I'll just say, just come. Don't sponsor the event. Show up, because I know I'm going to have you hooked after one
event.
Come
check it out.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Solomon, Instagram, check him out. The Olympia, it's an event of a lifetime. You owe it to yourself to experience, to be around the greatest in the world. These are people that prepare, commit, and train, and they become the best in the world. They're beautiful. I mean, I can't, when I'm out in a restaurant, I'm out in the world, and I see a man whose muscles are popping off his arms, correct? When he walks around in shorts, the quads are popping. He's got those calves. He garners attention. Imagine the Olympia event. We have thousands and thousands of people from all over the world coming to see the greatest in the world. What I would say to you are the greatest bodies, physiques in the world, whether they're in a wheelchair or they're 6'2", 300 pounds, and 4% body fat.
Ross, you know what it is? It's the greatest energy in the world.
I agree with that. You owe it to yourself to experience once. And if you've never been to Vegas, usually it's in October, right? The first week in October or so.
It's this year. It's the weekend of October 9th, 10th, 11th.
I expect an invitation. I want you guys to know I'll be there this year. I'm friggin' excited. Dan Solomon, president, Mr. Olympia. Let's go.